to your health. The French do take health care seriously, and they provide it in a system that's quite different from our own. Rita Braver will be examining our health care debate a little later. First, though, the French model from David Turacamo, our man in Paris.
This summer in Paris, my friends Matt and Nomi had twins.
Pretty cool, man.
Yeah, Matt's British, so they ended up naming their sons George and Alistair. But Nomi's French, and that's what's important here, because the entire family is covered by the French national health care system. So even though the boys were delivered by cesarean section and Nomi spent 9 days in a private room, leaving the hospital they paid
19 euros for the TV.
That's around $25.
I know what you're thinking.
Well, they also paid $165 for the first night. But, you know, twins delivered by cesarean, 9 days in a private room, and the cost was about $190. We could learn something from the French. I mean, for one thing,
all the people coming to our emergency department is treated equal. We can't say a patient, oh, you don't have money, or you don't have this kind of insurance.
Want to hear that again?
We can't say a patient, oh, you don't have money, or you don't have this kind of insurance.
Well, in fairness, emergency rooms in the United States are obliged to treat and at least stabilize everyone. But because of the cost, many Americans never see a doctor until it is an emergency. If anything, the French go to doctors too much, simply because they can afford it. You see, a typical office visit will cost them...
C'est 22 euros.
That's about $28.
Ça fait sourire un Américain, évidemment.
But please, don't laugh. See, 65% is covered by the national health system. The rest is picked up by private insurance, which is available to everyone at a nominal cost. But even with that, one doctor in private practice told me,
patient have a big problem, no job, nothing, I say, okay, don't pay.
Would you like to hear that again?
I say, okay, don't pay.
Now, you should know, of course, French doctors make a lot less than their American counterparts, roughly $50,000 to $100,000 a year. That's because the French government, not the doctors or pharmaceutical companies, no, the French government sets the prices for everything, prices they feel are reasonable. Now, critics argue that's socialized medicine, but other doctors say it's what we call managed care.
And most of the time, it doesn't cost anything for the patient.
So the French go to a drugstore to fill a prescription and...
Most of the people don't pay anything in the pharmacy.
Sound good? Well, 8 years ago, the World Health Organization released a study ranking France as having the best healthcare system in the world. Well, even the French tend to roll their eyes when they hear that, and the study itself has been criticized for its methodology. But it's not just the quality of healthcare this country offers, it's the fact that it's offered to everyone. Every man, woman, and child who is a legal resident in France is covered by national health care. It's a comprehensive system that's innovative as well. You see, these people, they're with SAMU, which is like our EMS, the Emergency Medical Services. When you call the emergency number, first you talk to a doctor who decides whether or not your case is an emergency. It's a time and cost-effective measure because out of every 1,000 calls they receive, only about 50 turn out to be real medical emergencies.
That means in more than 95% of the case, we can deal the call without using the full team.
Because the full team in France includes a doctor, a nurse, technicians, and a battery of equipment and drugs.
These are drugs you will not see in the United States. These are drugs for general anesthesia. We have all the monitoring. We have the possibility to give the drugs with infusion with a computer. It's like having a small part of the emergency room in the street.
See, in the U.S., ambulance teams are paramedics, whose job is to get a patient to the nearest emergency room quickly. Here, the idea is to bypass the emergency room altogether. The patient is treated at the scene, on average for about 45 minutes. And when she is moved to a hospital, it's one chosen not for its proximity, but its specialty.
We think this hospital is a better place for this type of disease.
The patient is taken directly to the specialized ward because we have already begun the treatment and the specialist is waiting for him.
Are there failures? Of course. Case in point, the death of Princess Diana, which some critics say was caused because SAMU spent more than an hour and a half treating her at the scene before moving her to a hospital. But overall, doctors agree the system is pretty effective.
If you have only a paramedic that is allowed to do some procedures, that's good. But where is the diagnosis? To go in the hospital and to save time, we need a precise diagnosis.
But what if it's not an emergency? What if, like, well, during this January blizzard a few years back, my daughter ran a fever, and... Look, every doctor in France makes house calls, but this group, SOS Médecins, specializes in making house calls at off hours and weekends. They respond to about 2 million calls a year across France.
Oui, SOS Médecins?
And can have a doctor at your home or hotel, usually within an hour of your call. They receive no state support and charge 52 euros, or about $65 for a visit, which is generally fully reimbursable. Of course, all this comes with a price tag. On a per capita basis, it costs the French about $3,400 a year for health care, most of which, they complain, comes from taxes. But in the U.S., per capita spending for health care is almost double that figure. And there are still roughly 46 million Americans who are uninsured. And while the French are determined to preserve their system, it's currently running a $12 to $14 billion deficit. So most people agree something's got to change.
People coming in France and they, come to France just to have free cares and they don't pay.
So, is their system really better than ours? The best in the world? Well, the only thing I can say definitively is, in France at least, you can go to the hospital without going broke.